Happy Monday. Welcome to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Craig Mish back with you for another week of shows every day, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern, exclusively here on NewsWire. As we get to our top stories in the show, we got some great guests coming up. Naturally, we'll get to the very latest in sports wagering going on across the country with our guest contributor each and every day from Legal Sports Report. We'll also dive a little bit into tonight's WNBA Draft, maybe the most historical of all time, with Caitlin Clark expected to go first overall, but a lot of other positions still to remain. So stay with us here on the grid for that. And don't forget, folks, a massive week coming up for the NBA with the play-in games coming up tomorrow night. Gilbert McGregor will discuss what is at stake for a lot of historical teams in the NBA with multiple championships that could be in or out. But let's start with who's in, and that was Scottie Scheffler at the Masters. The favorite indeed wins. This is his second win at Augusta in the last 3 years, 11 under for the weekend, and -4 on Sunday. And Scheffler had some bogeys along the way, but wrapped it up late. He becomes the first odds favorite, by the way, to win the Masters since Tiger Woods, more on him later, since 2005. The 17th golfer to win multiple green jackets, the fourth youngest golfer to do it behind Nicklaus, Woods, and Seve Ballesteros. Incredible run for Scottie Scheffler. By the way, he is the current favorite at the PGA Championship, plus 450. He is the favorite to win the U.S. Open at 5-1. And he's the favorite at the Open Championship later this summer. And as you can see, it was a great weekend for Scottie. And also, Oberg with a great, nice run to finish second at 7 under par. Colin Morikawa, 4 under par, tied with Homa and Fleetwood. And as you can see on the graphic there, some others too, Will Zalatoris, Xander. A lot of money going around at Augusta. So that is the final leaderboard from yesterday at the Masters. So the NBA playoffs, in terms of the seeding, is set with the exception of the play-in games. Now, here is sort of the scenario here. We're going to paint the picture for you, and naturally, a lot is going to happen in the next 48 hours. But we'll start with the Eastern Conference, where everything is set. The Celtics are going to play against this round-robin end of the play-in game tournament, which is sort of how it works. I'll describe it for you in a second. But Cavs will play the Magic in the first round. That's the 4-5. Bucks get the 3 seed, so they will play the Pacers, who are the 6. And we also know that the Knicks are going to play the winner of Philadelphia and Miami in the game tomorrow night in Philadelphia, where Joel Embiid is expected to return and play in that game. Philadelphia, 4.5-point favorites. Now, again, there's another play-in game in the East still to be determined. That, of course, will be the Chicago Bulls and the Atlanta Hawks. So those teams are still alive as well. Now, over in the Western Conference, we know the seedings as well. Oklahoma City, they are the number 1 going into the Western Conference side of the playoffs. Clippers play the Mavericks again. That's the 4-5. Minnesota is the 3 seed, not the 2. They'll play the Phoenix Suns. And the Denver Nuggets capture that 2. And the Pelicans play the Lakers coming up with LeBron in a play-in game again. That game will be played between those 2 teams Tuesday night in the West. New Orleans, the 7, takes on the Lakers. They are the 8. And Oklahoma City will wait the winner between the Kings and the Warriors. And then again, the loser of that 7-8 play-in game between New Orleans and LA. So Sacramento, Golden State, and New Orleans and LA. That will be the matchups going into the final week of the NBA's playoff season, beginning of the playoff season. And then again, there's the East, by the way, too. Let me get to that. As I said, Philadelphia takes on Miami. Philly -4.5 tomorrow night. Wednesday night, excuse me. And then the Chicago Bulls will take on the Atlanta Hawks on Wednesday night as well. Chicago -3.5-point favorites, but Trae Young is back for the Atlanta Hawks, so I guess you never know. Did you catch all that? Well, don't worry. We're going to break it down for you coming up with Gilbert McGregor as well. In baseball, we've got Patriots games set to go off in about 5 minutes from now. Boston Red Sox, of course, at home. I'll preview that game for you. Unfortunately, bad news for the Atlanta Braves. We saw this coming. Spencer Strider going to have Tommy John surgery. He's going to miss the rest of the season. How about Blake Snell? He returns to his old stomping grounds in Tampa. Actually, St. Petersburg. That's where the park is. He got clobbered. San Francisco won that game 9-4. Tough first start, tough second start for the reigning Cy Young Award winner. Remember, he signed very late in the offseason, And the Giants now head to South Florida to take on the Marlins, who, speaking of which, my goodness, in the top of the ninth with a 1-run lead with 2 runners on and 2 strikes on Marcell Ozuna. Ozuna hits a 3-run home run off Tanner Scott to defeat the Marlins, and the Braves win 2 out of 3. Miami also, a short time ago, announced that they are placing third baseman Jake Berger on the injured list as well. So not a great start to the Marlins season, and ruining my baseball in the month of April here in South Florida as well. Oh, you used my yikes. That's a good one there. Yeah, I do that a lot on social media when things don't go well. That's a surprise. I didn't see that in the rundown to start the show. Not bad. Kenley Jansen, who got a save yesterday, says that the quality of the baseballs in Major League Baseball is very poor. He said, quote, "It's embarrassing, and for a while I've been playing in this league, and from the beginning of my career, it's getting worse." Now, he did strike out all-world player Mike Trout to end the game yesterday, but I guess those baseballs were in good shape for Kenley Jansen, who is a potential Hall of Famer, let's be honest. Not many out there as a reliever. Now, as far as Patriots game is concerned today, it's also Jackie Robinson Day in Major League Baseball. Red Sox minus 134 on the money line against the Cleveland Guardians. By the way, that first pitch, I think, being thrown out like right now as we speak. All right, let's get to the latest finances in sports wagering. We've got FanDuel making news. FanDuel leads New York $42 million in revenue ending the week of April the 7th. And mobile sports betting is obviously accounting for more than half of that total. And the handle's up 2.1% following the previous week, just shy of $466 million. Another multi-million-dollar week for FanDuel. Indiana also reporting $500 million in sports betting for the month of March. Great college basketball state, not a huge surprise. Indiana Gaming Commission reporting $500.8 million in sports betting. 4th time in 55 months, Indiana surpassed the $500 million worth of wagers. DeForest Buckner gets a 2-year, $46 million contract extension with the Indianapolis Colts. $23 million AAV. That's going to rank 5th for defensive tackles in the NFL. And less than 30 minutes ago, the Philadelphia Eagles made a contract extension official. Devontae Smith, wide receiver on the Eagles, signs a 3-year, $75 million contract extension, $51 million guaranteed. That's going to keep him in Philadelphia with that revamped team and offense after that tough ending last year. He has 3,100 yards and 19 touchdowns since he ended up in Philadelphia. Now, if you want some of the odds on the NBA playoffs and everything going on in the NHL as we head to the playoffs as well, download the SportsGrid app. It'll give you all the odds, news, notes, information. And by the way, great content from all of our shows and videos as well. It is the SportsGrid app available on iOS and Android. All right, coming up next, Gilbert McGregor is with us. We'll try to sort out this NBA play-in situation. Lakers, Pelicans, Warriors, Kings, Heat, 76ers, Hawks, and Bulls. All those teams are not going to be playing in the NBA playoffs, but they will be playing in the play-in. Gilbert is going to tell us who's going to move on after the break.
People that bashed him will be eating their words this year.
Pretty heavily favored to be a first-round pick, minus 400 earlier this week. But that's not the surprise.
If you're drafting J.J. McCarthy in the first half of the first round, you clearly believe not only is he a starter, he's going to be your starter for years to come. But
a popular bet was under 3.5 wide receivers in the first round.
The tape doesn't lie, baby.
Only on SportsGrid.
Victor Hovland right now can probably hit it right where he's looking on the range. But the problem is when you get out to a golf course, especially like Augusta National, it's a big, big picture. You can see every shot in the world, but the targets are really, really small.
I feel like whoever we pick is going to win. Like, I feel like we have the power to choose the winner of this tournament.
I know. I'm surprised more guys haven't reached out.
And they might, and they probably will.
Only on SportsGrid.
89-87, 0.6 seconds remaining. Big drama here in this game. Always frustrating when your Final Four parlay and bracket gets busted, but here we go. I'm done.
Look what he is now. He's on FanDuel, plus 120.
almost even money to win the tournament. So you actually, if you did get them at plus 260, you got a pretty good, better investment than you had before. Just saying.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Blocked well and tries to cut through the middle. Oh!
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Craig Mish back with you. We got to sort out this play-in game nonsense here in the NBA. It was just so much easier years ago. I didn't have to figure. I knew exactly who was in, who was out. All right, thank goodness Gilbert McGregor is here. He's the man to talk to about this. Now, Gilbert, what I like about the play-in, okay, let me give you my positive, my negative. I'll start off with the positive. What I like about the play-in games this year is we've got some really historical franchises and teams involved. The Lakers, the Warriors, the Heat, the 76ers, the Chicago Bulls. That's what I like. What I don't like is trying to figure out what's going on. Gilbert, that's number one. And number two, I guarantee you there are like 2 or 3 teams that do not deserve to be playing in this, but here we are. So does my positive outweigh the negative here?
It's tough, Craig. You know, when you talk about these pros and cons, I would say the one I'd add to that is that it made games matter through the last day. We saw teams fighting for playoff positioning, and some teams were tanking for playoff positioning and taking for draft stock. But it did make every game matter for those teams in that top 10 range. And now, as you said, we've got a couple good matchups. You get to see LeBron James in a Game 7-like situation. You know, get to see Joel Embiid go against the Heat in a Game 7-like situation. So there's a lot at stake when these play-in tournament games get going, and I'm certainly going to be tuned in.
Yeah, me too. I can't wait to see some of these, especially here in South Florida, watching the Heat, and I'll get to that here in a minute. Okay, so let's start off with LeBron James, a familiar sight here, back in play-in range here, going up against New Orleans. This is not going to be easy. Lakers are 1-point favorites. The Pelicans, I mean, I think they're the better team here, but again, they're not. You can't make the Pelicans favored. You know, the books are going to get crushed on that. Everyone wants to see LeBron move on. So total 225, Gilbert. Let's get it started. Tomorrow night, who wins this one?
I think the Lakers have the Pelicans number until further notice. Zion Williamson is actually 1-7 in his career against LeBron James. And 2 of those 7 losses was yesterday in a game that was crucial for both teams, and that debacle in the in-season tournament semifinals where the Lakers beat the Pelicans by 40 plus. I would love for the Pelicans to prove me wrong, but it seems like the Lakers just seem to have an edge over them. There's the Anthony Davis storyline. There's the Brandon Ingram storyline. And the Pelicans just don't necessarily do what it takes for these matchups, and the Lakers seem to get up for these matchups. I don't think it's that much of an incentive to go and face the Denver Nuggets in the next round, because that's who the winner of this game would play. But I think the Lakers understand the value of winning. They're 2-0 in the play-in tournament. They won last year, and they won in 2021. but those were home games. So this time they're on the road in New Orleans. It's hard to beat the same team twice in 3 days, but they have their number.
Yeah, I would agree. Now, I'm a little bit stronger on this game right here, Gilbert. I like Sacramento tomorrow night. I think the Kings are going to win this game. I've seen Golden State play this season extremely inconsistent. I get that you got to make them favorites, and they got Hall of Famers on that team. I understand that. Total is 225, but I'm not buying this. I am not buying it. I think the Kings, Gilbert, are going to at least win this game. I don't know how far they can go. They were the better team this season.
They were the better team this season, and it's interesting because we talked about this a few weeks ago with the injuries to Malik Monk and Kevin Huerter and how that's going to impact this Kings team. And it really reminds me of last year when these same two teams were playing in a Game 7 in Sacramento. It's a very similar situation. Steph Curry went off for 50 points, which was a record until it was outdone by Jason Tatum a few weeks later. But the fact that he did that, I think that is on the memories of both of these teams. I don't know if it's going to require that much from Steph Curry, but he is going to have a superhuman-like performance. I do think the Warriors are trending at the right time. They've played really good basketball kind of closing the season. They had that huge game in Los Angeles last week and then had a big loss to the Pelicans that caught them in this situation right now. So I'm leaning Warriors slightly just because they've been here before. And similar to the Lakers-Pelicans situation, they do have this team's number. And Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, those guys have done this together in that same building, and I think the Warriors might pull it off.
All right, I got one-man show. Got to stop that guy in Curry. Okay, so now here is the compelling game, I think, of the week. It's the Miami Heat, who just don't care about the season, and all they do is show up in the playoffs with Jimmy Butler, and the playoff Jimmy goes crazy, and then they go very far. The 76ers, obviously, we know their story. I mean, they lost Joel Embiid, and they just went in the tank. And they got themselves into this position. They're a pretty big favorite for this kind of game, 4.5 going into tomorrow night. Gilbert, the Heat fan base, extremely divided. Like half of them think, here comes playoff Jimmy, Heat's going to do it again. The other half are saying, we watched this team a lot during the regular season. This just can't continue to happen like this. Which side are you on here?
Well, I'm on the side of saying this is definitely going to be a fight. I'm interested to look at it because it's the same things we're saying about the Heat right now. We could have said last season, the concerns, the 50-50 split on them. Even in that play-in tournament game when they lost to the Hawks, it looked like they were done. Right. And they ended up going on that run that they went on last year. So you can never count out this Heat team. That said, I do lean 76ers in this game just because I think they're not trying to play any extra games. There's a little more incentive to go and face the Knicks in the first round. But I don't think you should be rushing to play the Knicks in the first round. But the winner of this game will take on the Knicks, who won the 2 seed yesterday. There's that rivalry, Jimmy Butler against his former team, Tobias Harris, who he thinks they've replaced him with or chose over him. Joel Embiid, I think, is going to be the game changer here. He had a big game against the Heat pretty recently. Bam Adebayo, Joel Embiid battling on the block. I think that's going to be a difference in this game.
All right, so fair enough. Now, Atlanta Hawks, Chicago Bulls, I probably could go either way here. I mean, neither team really, honestly, Gilbert, do I care about. Do I think either team is going to win a first-round series? No. Bulls -3 at home, money line -144, total 219. Get me excited about this game. I'm having a hard time doing it.
Well, you know what? The one thing I can say about this game that could be exciting, I think it's actually going to be a thrilling game between these two teams. The Bulls and the Hawks were in the play-in tournament last year. They seemed like perennial play-in tournament teams, but last year the Bulls had that comeback victory over the Raptors, thanks a large part to DeMar DeRozan's daughter, who got the Raptors off their game at the free throw line. And Trae Young had a big play-in tournament performance, has never lost in the play-in tournament. So these are two teams who are primed for this moment, and I think that Trae Young is a type of player in a game like this, which is like a Game 7. He can go off and make 5 or 6 threes in a game like this. And Kobe White is another player for the Bulls who could be in most improved player talk. He's not going to win the award. So there's some star power. These teams will get up and down the floor. It should be a thrilling game. And the Bulls, like you mentioned, are a historic franchise. So if nothing else, you can look and see those banners up in the rafters at the United Center.
All right, Michael Jordan shows up. I'm going to tune right in, Gilbert. Scottie Pippen, too. I'm all over it. Horace Grant. Okay, we only have 2 minutes left, so I don't think we're going to get through all this. Let's get through some of the tight series here. We've got the Cavs and the Magic, 4-5 in the East. No one had Orlando in this spot at the beginning of the season, playing with a little house money. Cavs are favored, sort of heavy here, -195, but I'm seeing other series that are in the 200s, so not as much. Do you think Orlando can pull this series off?
There's always a chance. I like the Cavaliers in this series. It's a team who's been here before. At least they were here last year. Didn't necessarily go how they wanted it to go, but there's something to be said about the fact that they've been on the playoff stage together. This is the first time for Orlando. They're led by a second-year player in Paolo Banchero. It's a huge accomplishment for them to be here, but they have to now take their bumps and growing pains along the way.
All right, and let me hit on one in the West here. Let's do Minnesota and Phoenix. This one seems to be divided. Boy, Phoenix minus 120, Minnesota minus 102. That's horrible. Can't even get any plus money in this series, FanDuel? Please, give me somebody plus. Boy, I'm going to root for Minnesota here because I like the story. I like a good story for a franchise that hasn't done a lot. But Phoenix is battle-tested, and that's sort of my issue here.
Phoenix is battle-tested. They needed a lot of wins to close the season, and they did. I think they won 7 of their last 10, including the last game of the season against Minnesota. There's a little bit of competitive fire, some back talk between these teams, and it's a really tough matchup for Minnesota. I think the series could go the distance, but I'm leaning Phoenix just because of their star power.
Fair enough, Gilbert. Enjoy the playoffs. We'll talk again next week.
Sounds good. Looking forward to it.
Sam McQuillan joins us next.
People that bashed him will be eating their words this year.
Pretty heavily favored to be a first-round pick, minus 400 earlier this week. But that's not the surprise.
If you're drafting J.J. McCarthy in the first half of the first round, you clearly believe not only is he a starter, he's going to be your starter for years to come. But
a popular bet was under 3.5 wide receivers in the first round.
The tape doesn't lie, baby.
Only on SportsGrid.
Victor Hovland right now can probably hit it right where he's looking on the range. But the problem is when you get out to a golf course, especially like Augusta National, it's a big, big picture. You can see every shot in the world, but the targets are really, really small.
I feel like whoever we pick is going to win. Like, I feel like we have the power to choose the winner of this tournament.
I know. I'm surprised more guys haven't reached out.
And they might, and they probably will.
Only on SportsGrid.
89-87, 0.6 seconds remaining. Big drama here in this game. Always frustrating when your Final Four parlay and bracket gets busted, but here we go. I'm done.
Look what he is now. He's on FanDuel, plus 120. Almost even money to win the tournament. So you actually, if you did get him at plus 260, you got a pretty good, better investment than you had before. Just saying.
Sports Rage Late Night. Only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on Sports Grid. Craig Mish back with you, along with Sam McQuillan from Legal Sports Report. We've got a lot of stories to cover here today. Latest on DraftKings, by the way, interesting comments coming from their CEO. Stay tuned for that. But first, Sam, let's get to the story that looks like it's coming to a conclusion. I don't know if you feel that way. At least that's the way it's being posed, with Shohei Ohtani's interpreter being charged in federal court, fraud charges coming in, stealing from the player that he's working for, Shohei Ohtani. And I guess that's probably the first place to go here, Sam, is do you think that this is going to close the book, so to speak, on this, or do you think we have more to come?
Yeah, Craig, I'd have to agree. It seems like this is coming to a favorable end for both the Shohei Ohtani side and Major League Baseball. The fact that, Ippei Mizuhara was charged last week in federal court now, that basically got federal investigators involved, able to look at exactly what was going on and sort of answer a lot of the questions that we had and the general public has had about, was Ohtani involved in betting? Did he know about this kind of thing? Was baseball bet on? Basically, Ippei admitted to stealing $16 million from the Los Angeles Dodgers star. There's text messages that came out saying, this is all over for me, when he's talking to this bookie in California about what exactly went on. And it could result in 30 years in prison for Mizuhara because of the bank fraud charge of his former friend, former employee. He was the interpreter for him, Ohtani, who largely speaks Japanese, but you've seen recently maybe trying to dabble in English a little bit more so you don't have to rely on someone like this who had access to his bank account and really has created quite the headache for the Dodgers star. Interesting details that came out from this federal investigation, which kind of suggests that maybe it's coming to a close, is exactly what was bet on. There was no baseball that they found was bet on. Most importantly, probably there is no evidence that Ohtani even knew about this going on or knew that, his friend had been in debt massively. I think originally when this came out, the way it was handled by Ohtani's team, first kind of trying to, maybe take some of the fall for his friend, but not realizing maybe what that could actually he would be admitting to. That kind of created a messy situation, but it seems like it's all getting sorted out now. So we'll see where this goes next. There's a report that Ippei is going to try to do a plea deal, which means you could get more information coming out probably about the bookie that he was betting with, who's a big bookmaker, was telling people reportedly that Ohtani was a client, which is good for business when you're a legal bookmaker. It makes people more confident in betting with you, legitimizes you and everything. The interesting thing, what this could lead to for baseball if they feel like they need to put some more reforms in afterwards. I'm not really sure what they could have done to prevent this in the first case. If something's illegal and someone's doing it, it's illegal. And education can only go so far. They already do a ton of it. Maybe for the Japanese players coming in or more international players coming in, more of an emphasis on making sure that they know exactly what is going on instead of going through an interpreter, because it could have been the case where they were giving him all this education in English. The interpreter maybe wasn't telling him. So it's tough when you're relying on someone like that to pretty much tell you all the rules and everything. So seems like it's coming to a close now. Then probably the next page will be the aftermath and the reaction. How do we address it? That kind of thing.
Yeah, no, agreed. And we'll see what the future holds. And naturally, Sam, to me, one of the more intriguing things that hasn't been discussed, and I know that's nothing that you know or I know, is this supposed interview that Ippei did almost immediately on camera for ESPN, is that ever going to see the light of day? I mean, I would assume so at some point, but it's almost like it doesn't exist anymore. It's sort of bizarre, but anyway, story files for our next our next show. Okay, so let's head over to Delaware. A new bill for the casinos in sports betting. Bet Rivers, obviously one of the big players there. What do you think this holds for the future in Delaware?
Yeah, Delaware is a really interesting state. It's actually the first state, not Nevada, to take a legal sports bet. So essentially when the U.S. sports betting wave started, Delaware was the first one, but they've only really had one app in the state since then, which has been Bet Rivers, which is questionable if you just looking on the surface at most states having FanDuel, DraftKings, BetMGM, or even 20 to 25 different apps. It's been interesting that Delaware has only stuck with one. It's obviously a smaller state, so that could be why as well. But there's this bill that was introduced that would essentially allow the state's existing casinos, there's 3 of them, to each partner with 2 more online sports books, what's called skins. So each casino would have access to at least 2 partners, which could mean that there's as many as 6 or 7 sports books in the state if it gets passed. Now, the tricky thing there is, would operators really want to come in? They haven't been really angry about not being entered into the market. Bet Rivers enjoys their monopoly there. Actually, when the bid was up to have the monopoly over online sports betting in Delaware, FanDuel, DraftKings, BetMGM, there wasn't much interest from them at the time. But obviously, times have changed. It's been a while since then. The landscape is different. The market share battle is different. And in a year when you don't have, most legislation is been stalling or failing in a lot of states, and it kind of seems like there's a plateau that the industry's hitting in terms of 37 states now. This could be a good opportunity for them to come in relatively easily and just grab up a new state. Pretty interesting as well that the bill is a pretty friendly tax rate. It also allows operators to deduct promotions that they give out from their taxable revenue, which is a trend we really saw a lot of states address over the past couple of years, reversing that, saying, oh, we don't want to allow you this mechanism to just dole out a million promos. Right. So Delaware, they're doing the opposite here, thinking that they want a more, promo-friendly market, a more competitive market. So I think that's something interesting to watch too, is if that legislation bleeds over into other new states, or how states kind of rethink sports betting going forward. But we'll see what happens with the bill. It was just introduced. It could be a case where it's an election year, so this isn't a huge priority for some lawmakers in the state. But so far, relatively good news for companies if you want to come in, and we'll see if they take advantage of it or not.
Okay, and we talked about the Ohtani story. This interpreter, Ipe, clearly was a problem gambler. I mean, he would be identified as that and beyond. Now, there are a lot of others that are out there, and it was very intriguing to see the CEO of DraftKings being asked a specific question, Jason Robbins, about problem gamblers specifically. And his answer, Sam, may have caught some people by surprise. Tell us what he said, and if it was surprising to you, or is it just the reality of where we're at in sports wagering?
I wasn't super surprised with the sentiment that Robbins said, essentially that, there's only so much a sports betting company can do. It's on DraftKings, it's on the industry to try to catch these things that are going on, give people the tools to help themselves, prevent problem gambling, promote smart betting and all that. But the sort of surprising thing that was in there was that he said, there's only so much we can do. People have to want to be able to help themselves as well. If they don't want help, if they can't change themselves, we can't do that for them. While true, if someone's struggling with addiction or any kind of problem, someone has to want to get help to be able to get help. You can't lead a horse to water and make the horse drink the water. There's only so much you can do. I didn't think the timing of it was super great, considering everything that's been going on with Ohtani's interpreter, the scandals in the NBA with Jonte Porter, the manipulated player props, the new regulatory coalition that has just emerged, the federal oversight. There's just a long list. The NCAA trying to ban college player props. The timing didn't seem great. It seemed slightly tone deaf in terms of, maybe now isn't the time to say it. But the sentiment itself, you have to agree with. There's only so much a sports betting company can do, right? It's their business at the end of the day. Now, DraftKings does do a lot already on problem gambling, which Robbins is probably alluding to. Like, there's only so much we can do. We educate people. We talk to our employees. We display the national toll-free hotline all over our websites, all over our assets. They're partnered with the National Council on Problem Gambling. They have all these different tools, DK Safer Play, which tries to get people help. They just formed that Responsible Online Gaming Coalition. So it's sort of like, what more can they do? He was also asked about the use of AI. Some people have suggested using that as a tool to identify behavior of problem gambling on your platform, while it's happening, before it's happening. He said that that's not really on the table right now. Kind of some other strange comments, like it could be a slippery slope, like it's a delicate situation. Some lawmakers have suggested preventing sports betting companies from using artificial intelligence at all to track employee habits. So it's sort of the strange timing of these comments, while not super problematic, could be taken out of context and could be used by some people who want to crack down on the industry, some people who really want to put these severe guardrails on the industry. I'm sure there's plenty of politicians that would like to make that a centerpiece of their campaign. As people see this wave of issues that we're talking about and the wave of sports betting commercials that I think people have really gotten tired of. And it seems like it could be potentially fodder for something you don't want to have happen. So, not the best timing, not the best comments, but at the end of the day, nothing earth shattering and nothing that's going to destroy the industry all in one.
Yep, I would agree. Comments. Anytime one of the head operators speaks about sports betting, I think it just makes news in general. All right, Sam, great to catch up with you. We'll talk again soon, and good luck with your NBA playoff watching as well. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you. Go Knicks.
All right. Well, not against the Heat, but other than that, sure. All right, we'll take a quick timeout. Coming up next, it's time for us to figure out who the number 2 pick in the WNBA draft is going to be, because we know who the number 1 pick is going to be, let's be honest. But Mitchell Hansen, who covers the Minnesota Lynx in the WNBA, will shed some light on that coming up next right here on NewsWire. Don't go away.
People that bashed him will be eating their words this year.
Pretty heavily favored to be a first-round pick, minus 400 earlier this week. But that's not the surprise.
If you're drafting J.J. McCarthy in the first half of the first round, you clearly believe not only is he a starter, he's going to be your starter for years to come. But
a popular bet was under 3.5 wide receivers in the first round.
The tape doesn't lie, baby.
Only on SportsGrid.
Victor Hovland right now can probably hit it right where he's looking on the range. But the problem is when you get out to a golf course, especially like Augusta National, it's a big, big picture. You can see every shot in the world, but the targets are really, really small.
I feel like whoever we pick is going to win. I feel like we have the power to choose the winner of this tournament.
I know. I'm surprised more guys haven't reached out.
And they might, and they probably will.
Only on SportsGrid.
89-87, 0.6 seconds remaining. Big drama here in this game. Always frustrating when your Final Four parlay and bracket gets busted, but here we go. I'm done.
Look what he is now. He's on FanDuel, plus 120. Almost even money to win the tournament. So you actually, if you did get him at plus 260, you got a pretty good, better investment than you had before. Just saying.
Sports Rage Late Night. Only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
No drama for the number one pick in the WNBA draft tonight. Caitlin Clark is going to go number one. In fact, you can't even bet it, so don't even try. But Mitchell Hansen is here to help us through the rest. He covers the WNBA and also the Minnesota Lynx on the show, and it'll be a lot of fun. There's no question. I think more people will be watching tonight, Mitchell, to see history happen. Best women's college basketball player, maybe best college basketball player ever become the number one pick. But I think beyond that, that's where the intrigue begins. Thanks again for coming on NewsWire.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to the draft. It's going to be it's a very talented draft class, as you mentioned at the top of the draft, but especially throughout the first round. It'll be a entertaining and exciting draft, and to see how these players do when they enter the WNBA. It'll be fun to watch.
Yeah, and the Indiana Fever have the number one overall pick, so we can pretty much guarantee Caitlin Clark is going to go number one. Beyond that, the Sparks pick 2, Chicago 3. LA 4, Dallas 5, Washington 5. Chicago has another pick here in the top 8, and then the Lynx traded up to get 8. So we'll get to that in just a sec. But let's start off with what this will mean for Caitlin Clark to be the number one overall pick. I mean, look, you can say, honestly, there have been players in the past, Shaquille O'Neal, Patrick Ewing. There's a long list of players, Wemby going number one as well. But we've never seen this kind of interest in the women's sport, let's be honest. And no player has ever transcended the game like Caitlin Clark. So I wonder what we'll get tonight, Mitchell, honestly, in this draft, because we know that she's going to be the number one overall pick, but she carries so much interest and fanfare around here as well. So I guess ratings will be interesting to see this too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of people will tune in just to, see that specific pick. But not only that, the talent that floods behind her too, I think is interesting and intriguing. But to your point with the following that Caitlin Clark has, I think part of it is with the exposure that the women's game has gotten. That's something that has been talked about for a long time, of whether it's a WNBA or women's basketball in general. Getting eyes on the game is obviously the most important thing, just so people can watch the game. But now that is happening, and now that that's happening more often and happening on bigger networks, people are intrigued with the women's game, and they realize it is something that is it's a quality product, and it's a good game, and there is top tier talent there. So it'll be interesting to see how the Caitlin Clark effect will impact the WNBA. It's already impacted the WNBA, and she hasn't even entered the WNBA officially until tonight. But it'll be interesting to see how that impacts not only ratings, but just the networks that people, or that the networks that will try and get this game, or at least get her games on their networks, and just kind of see how the game expands and grows beyond that.
Yeah, and you can't, by the way, on FanDuel tonight, as I mentioned, you can't bet this because Caitlin Clark is off the board. Brink is going to go 2. We know that, but I think the combo of where it goes 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, that's still up in the air with Cardozo, Jackson, and Sheldon at 5, and then Edwards there at 6. Do you think that this is sort of the positioning that will happen tonight in the draft, Mitchell, or do you think that there's a chance that this goes a little bit sideways?
I think that, well, specifically with the top 2 picks, I think those are pretty much set in stone. You're going to get Caitlin Clark number 1, and you're going to get Cameron Brink number 2. The interesting, pick will be that 3-4 spot with Cardozo and Rickea Jackson. It'll be interesting to see what Chicago does specifically, because LA is going to take whichever player is left beyond what Chicago does. But I honestly think that Cardozo could go 3rd overall to Chicago. I think her talent is. She is a great talent, and I think she's somebody that is worth picking up in that 3 spot. But I don't really think you can go wrong with Rickea Jackson either. She's a talent that will help either one of those teams, whether it's Chicago or Los Angeles. But I think that those 4 players specifically will go top 4, I believe, and beyond that, it'll get a little interesting to. See where the players fall beyond that. I think we could see some international players kind of rise up, or kind of get taken in maybe the early portions of the first round, or at least with the picks that are just beyond that 6-7 mark. But it'll be interesting to see what happens, because the draft kind of starts at 5 as far as the intrigue and kind of the mix ups that could happen.
Yeah, no, and I think that's the fun part is not knowing after the first and second pick are off the board. Also this one kind of came out of nowhere. The Lynx and Chicago Sky make a trade. Chicago has 2 picks in the top 8. You obviously are very close to covering Minnesota, so you sort of know what their thought process is there. Let's talk about this trade, why it happened, and who does Minnesota potentially take at 8?
Yeah, to me, that just means that that move specifically for Minnesota, from a Minnesota's lens, I think that means they're not, they don't view a player at number 7, or they formerly had the number 7 pick. I don't think they are really crazy about any particular player. And before the draft, the front office had talked about, being open to conversations, being open to being able to move. And I think that it was just a good opportunity. You're only moving back 1 spot. You're getting an extra draft pick. You're getting an intriguing talent. The Lynx, I think we're going to move on from Nikolina Milic anyway. So it just kind of makes sense on all fronts for the Lynx. And now it also allows them to maybe look at other positions. I thought they were potentially going to go forward when they had number 7, whether that's Angel Reese, Alyssa Peely. But now they can truly take best player available, whether it's a guard, whether it's a forward, whatever it may be, maybe an international player. Cheryl Reeve and that front office has long had a really good eye on the international game and a good pulse in the international game. So that wouldn't surprise me either. So it just made sense from all, I think, standpoints from the Lynx side of things, because they don't really have a glaring need. They're just looking to add for depth right now.
Yeah, no, it's really one thing for me that comes into play here is, as you said, with all of the attention on Caitlin Clark, what happens at the end of the draft. Any other storylines that we should be following, Mitchell, before we let you go here on tonight's draft? And look, there's going to be, let's be honest, after the first handful of picks, just like in the NBA, there's a lot of unfamiliarity with how things could go.
Mm-hmm. I think just one thing that I'm keeping an eye on is kind of what I mentioned earlier, just what international players kind of pop out, because that's something that not many WNBA fans are that familiar with normally with the international game, or kind of those names that are out there. I'm intrigued to see if some of those names pop up in the mid part of the first round or latter portion of the first round. I mentioned the Lynx pick; they could potentially do that. But to me, that would be where the kind of the shakeup, or kind of the mix up in things could take place. Is seeing those international players kind of appear, because a lot of those players we don't see for a couple of years, more often than not. They're more, they kind of stash or you pick and stash them for a couple of years, or kind of wait for them to develop overseas, and then they come over because you still own their rights. But to me, that's one thing I'm watching. And then, kind of the last 4 picks of the first round will be interesting to see maybe what players drop into the second round, and maybe some teams will try and be aggressive and move up to the beginning of the second round to try and get some of those players that they viewed as first round talent. So that will be a kind of an interesting part for me. And then obviously just seeing the viewership, like we talked about with, let's see if the WNBA draft breaks, record viewership like the women's national or the NCAA tournament did, just because of Caitlin Clark and the talent that is there. We'll see what the excitement is around the draft and just kind of the intrigue that surrounds it tonight.
All right. Well, Mitchell, we'll keep an eye on it. And thanks again for coming on the show. We'll keep an eye on your coverage as well of the WNBA draft. Appreciate you coming on NewsWire.
Absolutely. Appreciate it, guys.
All right. Well, with the WNBA draft happening tonight, we can take a look at the rearview mirror for the Masters. And as we talked about earlier in the show, the one thing that we did not mention was the fact that one positive thing came out of the Masters for Tiger Woods, which was that he did make the cut. Okay, so those of you who were into that, I know there was very heavily bet wager on FanDuel and DraftKings and in Las Vegas as well. He made the cut, but things did not go well for Tiger after that. In fact, he finished 16 over par for the tournament, and that was the highest 72-hole score in his professional career, and left him in last place among those who actually made the cut. So the good news is that he competed for 4 days straight. The bad news is that the score wasn't necessarily where he wanted to be. And look, he's been talking about health. He wants to play the PGA Championship in Kentucky coming up. Hopefully he'll be able to do that in May. But, the end of the era was already there. The fact that he finished definitely an accomplishment, but you never want to see anybody go out at the bottom, which indeed is what Tiger Woods unfortunately did this weekend. Now, in case you missed our show on the early line earlier today, Charlie Holm was on there talking about Tiger Woods, some of the mixed bag of events that he had at the Masters, unfortunately, again, finishing last, but it shouldn't tarnish the legacy that he already has.
Yeah, man, it was a tough watch at times this week. I think everybody in the field played really slow during those windy conditions because you're trying to hit the right shots. But Tiger was playing at an especially deliberate pace, because he's working with the body and the conditions. I think that it's going to be tough for Tiger to win another event, let alone a major. Given what we've seen on the physical side from him. I think it could happen. If anything, I thought it was interesting the way he made the cut where, he kind of has that experience playing in all sorts of conditions and can find a way to score and goes out and does it and makes the cut where other guys they don't have that talent set or they don't have the ability to do it in a major. But I wonder, a lot of things are going to have to fall into place for Tiger to go out and win again. It's understandable. It's not only the physical too. It's like, here's a place where, he's losing some of the technical edges that he had. Like I saw a lot of putts left short the last couple of days, a couple of wedges that were a little loose. That's not the Tiger we know. And I think that has the most to do with where he's at physically. And that's just his reality. And I think he knows it.
You can catch the early line every day here on SportsGrid. Great guests along the way as well, talking about the Masters today and recapping the first major of the PGA Tour season, which was captured for the second time by Scottie Scheffler, who had a late charge on Sunday to win the championship and the green jacket at the Masters, his second win at Augusta the last 3 years. By the way, his score, as you see there on the leaderboard, was 11 under par for the weekend and 4 under on Sunday, with the runner-up being Lucas Aberg, followed by Colin Morikawa finishing third. He's the first odds favorite, by the way, to win the Masters since Tiger Woods, who we were just talking about, did it in 2005. He's also the 17th golfer to win multiple green jackets, fourth youngest golfer behind Nicholas Woods and Ballesteros. So those are the all-time greats. And Scottie Scheffler right now, I mean, you talk about winning 2 green jackets, it's already time to put him in the all-time greats as well. We'll see how he does at the PGA Championship coming up next month. All right, so let's take a timeout here on the show. When we come back next, in case you missed it over the weekend, those of you who are still staying up late or maybe streaming or watching clips of Saturday Night Live, you may have seen a special guest who appeared on the show. So we'll tell you who was that coming up next. Also, don't forget, we're right back here tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern, as we'll preview the Western Conference play-in games for the NBA playoffs. So make sure you stay on the grid for that, as well as all week long as we break down the NBA playoffs like nobody else can here on SportsGrid. We'll be right back.
People that bashed him will be eating their words this year.
Pretty heavily favored to be a first-round pick, minus 400 earlier this week. But that's not the surprise.
If you're drafting J.J. McCarthy in the first half of the first round, you clearly believe not only is he a starter, he's going to be your starter for years to come. But
a popular bet was under 3.5 wide receivers in the first round.
The tape doesn't lie, baby.
Only on SportsGrid.
Victor Hovland right now can probably hit it right where he's looking on the range. But the problem is when you get out to a golf course, especially like Augusta National, it's a big, big picture. You can see every shot in the world, but the targets are really, really small.
I feel like whoever we pick is going to win. Like, I feel like we have the power to choose the winner of this tournament.
I know. I'm surprised more guys haven't reached out.
And they might, and they probably will.
Only on SportsGrid.
89-87, 0.6 seconds remaining. Big drama here in this game. Always frustrating when your Final Four parlay and bracket gets busted, but here we go. I'm done.
Look what he is now. He's on FanDuel, plus 120. Almost even money to win the tournament. So you actually, if you did get him at plus 260, you got a pretty good, better investment than you had before. Just saying.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
He's blocked well and tries to cut through the middle. Oh!
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Some people have mentioned to me that watch this show that my studio, I guess we'll call it that, my studio background here that you see right behind me, looks a little like Weekend Update on Saturday Night Live. It's probably true. And a lot of you watching are going, you know what? It does. But we didn't take it from there. We did this separately. But the reason why I mentioned that is because if you watched Weekend Update over the weekend, nice little segue there on Saturday Night Live, you saw Caitlin Clark appear on Saturday Night Live. Yes, there she is. And ahead of the, big first pick coming tonight, obviously in New York, makes sense. Saturday, Sunday, Monday, spending the weekend in New York. Caitlin Clark has now gone big enough to appear on SNL, which, by the way, only the top of the top athletes get to appear on that show as well. So congrats to her, two-time AP Player of the Year, all-time leading scorer, men's or women's, and no doubt tonight we'll get that Indiana Fever jersey. And they don't even have to put the number 1 on that jersey. They could just give her number, whatever number she's going to wear there in the future. So congrats to her. All right, that will do it for our show today. Thanks to all of our great guests, including Mitchell for coming on and talking some WNBA and Minnesota Lynx with us as well, Sam McQuillan from Legal Sports Report, Gilbert McGregor from Sporting News, and, of course, thanks to Frank, who produced our show today. No doubt from start to finish, great job there. As a reminder, we're here every day, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern. So tune back in tomorrow morning as we go really into the NBA's play-in games, which are Western Conference on Tuesday, Eastern Conference on Wednesday. Also, Jacob Kamaker will join us on the show. We'll talk about the upcoming NFL draft. By the way, folks, that's a week from Thursday is the NFL draft. Also recap some Major League Baseball as well. So coming up next here on the grid, we got the early line. And then Scott Farrell's in the house, 3 o'clock Eastern. He's got Coast to Coast following our Game Time Decisions and live programming throughout the night, best in the business. And I know we have some big news coming up with some awards as well. We'll tell you all about that as the week continues. So enjoy the rest of your Monday. I know that I will. I'm looking forward to seeing you tomorrow here for our next edition of NewsWire.